Welcome back to my channel. In a previous video, we looked at consumer equilibrium with use of marginal utility. In today's video, we're going to be looking at consumer equilibrium using indifference curve analysis. So, what is an indifference curve? An indifference curve is a line which shows for a particular consumer all the combinations of two goods which yield the same level of total satisfaction to the consumer. And an indifference curve will usually take the form like this, which is a curve which is convex to the origin. And notice we have two goods. In this case, I simplified so that we can look at pineapples and mangoes as our goods. Now, with an indifference curve, it's just as the name would suggest, you are indifferent as to which combinations of goods along this one particular indifference curve you are at. You're indifferent in terms of the level of satisfaction that you would receive from consuming those combinations of goods. So, for example, at a point, we can call this, let's say, A. At a point such as A, we are indifferent in terms of this combination or a combination such as B in terms of the level of satisfaction that we would receive. So whether we are at A or we are at B or any other point along the indifference curve, we will still yield the same level of satisfaction. We have several indifference curves, and usually you would want to be on the most furthest out IC curve. Again, being a rational consumer, we would want to maximize our utility and our satisfaction, and so we would always aim to be at an IC curve which is furthest out, because that would mean we're getting more satisfaction. But of course, we are restrained by certain things. We can't always have everything that we want, as we know. And we are usually constrained by two things: price of goods and by our income. And this could be shown using what we would call a budget line. So a budget line shows various combinations of two goods that a consumer could purchase when spending all their income on these two goods only. And so a budget line would look like this, right? Downward sloping, again, two goods, pineapple and mangoes. And to show you how you would get these points here, right, this would be your origin here, 0. This point would be the maximum amount of mangoes that we can get if we spent all our income on mangoes, and this point would be the maximum number of pineapples we could get if we were to spend all our income on pineapples. And so this is how we would get these points. So this point would be your income divided by the price of pineapple. That will give you this point, and this point here would give us our point here for income divided by price of mangoes, the maximum amount. And so we could use a little example. So let's assume that our income is $20 and the price of mangoes is $2 for one. So we could put here our income is $20 and the price for mangoes, we said it'll be $2. So how we define out the maximum number of mangoes? It will be, as we said, the income divided by the price of mangoes. So that will be 20 divided by 2, which is equal to 10 mangoes. So if you were to spend all our money on mangoes, the maximum we could buy is 10. Let's look at the case now for pineapple. Assuming income is equal to $20 and the price of pineapple, let's say, is $4. how would we get the maximum number of pineapples we can get? It's the same thing, income divided by the price. So it would be 20 divided by 4, which is 5 pineapples. So that is the maximum amount that we could get. And so let's assume we have a case with, or before I even move on to that, the budget line therefore would show us the maximum combinations that we could get based on our income and our price. So now let's assume that there is a fall in the price of mangoes. So let's say we have a gluttony market and for some reason price has to fall. What will happen there? What will happen to the budget line? What we would have is a pivoting of the budget line. The budget line will now pivot to the right. So you'll have this new budget line now called BL2. It pivots to the right, pivots outward about this point. Notice it was not a shift, right? The budget line would pivot outwards, showing that as price of mangoes decrease, the amount or the quantity of mangoes consumed would be greater. And we of course could show this mathematically. So let's say instead of the price of mangoes being $2 for one, let's now assume that the mangoes are $1 for one. So your Y, your income, would be $20. The price for mangoes, we're saying it fell to now $1. So the maximum you can get if you spent all our money on mangoes, remember the formula, income divided by price will be 20 divided by 1, which is 20 units of mangoes. So we have a new maximum here. This will now be 20. The value for pineapple here would not change because the price of pineapple didn't fall. So even if we were to take our same income of $20 and we were to spend it all on pineapple, the maximum we can still get is 5. So that does not change. So when we have a fall in the price of mangoes, you will see the budget line pivoting outward to the right to indicate this fall in price. Let's assume now that instead of a fall in price of mangoes, we have an increase in our income. How this will affect our budget line. So we're going to start over with our original curves. And we have this increase in income. So let me put back the maximum points here. We said we will get 5 units of pineapple and 10 mangoes. This of course is assuming that our income was $20. So let's assume now that our income increased. So Y increased to $28. So what is going to happen there? It means that we can now get more pineapple and more mangoes. So you're going to have new maximum points for each fruit. So in the case of mangoes, the formula will still be the same, except in this case we'll have a new value for income, a new Y. So it's going to be 28 over 2. I believe 2 was the original price of mangoes, yeah? And that is going to give us 14 mangoes. And in the case of pine, we're seeing new income of $28 divided by the price of pine, which is $4. We're going to get 7 pineapples. So notice we can get more of both goods, more pineapples and more mangoes. And how this is illustrated on a budget line is you would have a shift of the budget line to the right. Notice this is not a pivot. So this would now be 14 and this point would now be 7. So you see we have an increase in the amount of mangoes we can get and an increase in the number of pineapples we can get. So using what we know with indifference curves and the budget line, when we combine them together, we can now determine what our consumer equilibrium would look like. So again, if you recall, we want to maximize utility, but we are constrained by our budget lines in terms of the income that we have and the prices of our goods and services. So if we were to have an indifference map showing several indifference curves, because the amount of indifference curves that we'll have would be infinite, this keeps going, right? We'd be constrained by our budget line here of, let's say, 5 units of the pineapple and the maximum here 10 mangoes. Where we would have consumer equilibrium would be where our budget line, let me put BL here, our budget line is tangential to the IC curve. So wherever our budget line is just touching the IC curve, that is where consumer equilibrium would occur. And this would happen at a point such as this. And we can put E here, so this is equilibrium, and we could call this, let's say, Y1 units of pineapple and X1 units of mangoes. If we're using figures, this might be, let's say, 3, and this might be, let's say, 5, right? Just making a rough estimate, right? So consumer equilibrium, as I said, it occurs where our budget line is tangential to our indifference curve, and this occurs right at this point here. I am Ms. Lucio and I make economics videos. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and remember to hit that notification bell.